Hello everyone, and welcome to the show.
If you should awaken, I will be there when you wake from your lovely
Welcome back. Another very interesting show today. What we're talking about today is the story, the biblical story of the Tower of Babel. What I said was the story of the Tower of Babel. This is why I believe that there are atheists in the world. Because of stories like this one. Stories that are so incredible, you would think that a 4-year-old created the story. But if you did so, you would then be putting down 4-year-olds in a way that they don't even deserve. The biblical story of the Tower of Babel. It's where they believe the term babbling came by. Now the scientific term is logoria. However, when you start to babble, logoria is excessive talkativeness. Babbling is the same thing. Well, there's a biblical story that says that God got upset at the people. He got so mad at them, he wanted to punish them by stirring up their language so they wouldn't be able to communicate with each other. He took 7 different groups and sliced them into 7 languages, so when they started talking, they were like blah 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 blah. One of the reasons why I'm here is to make sense out of the creator of the universe, because a lot of these biblical stories make the creator of the universe sound like some kind of, it's just not fair. The creator, you can create all this, and you have people in literature who write down stuff about you that makes you sound cuckoo. So this is what we're trying to correct. There's some cuckoo scriptures in the Bible. This is one of them. The one I told a few months ago, the one about the story of Noah, whose son found him naked, and Noah cursed the son, and that's why black people became slaves. That's the way the biblical story goes. God got upset for some reason, and then he punished the people by okay, now. With the Sumerian tablet, some of you that are new here, this is what my book is basically based upon the works of Hermes the Thrice-Born and the Sumerian tablets. Let me refresh you about the tablets. The Sumerian tablets were found in an area that is related to this story. As they were digging an archaeological dig, they found the ancient civilization of the Babylonians. The Tower of Babel happened in this area. I believe that instead of the Tower of Babel, like they're babbling, I believe it was because it was ancient Babylon where this took place. Where I know it was ancient Babylon where this all took place. They started digging there, and they found another civilization called the ancient Mesopotamians, and they found the Assyrians, and they found the library of Assurbanipal II. In his library, they found 30 to 40,000 tablets, and we are going through those tablets right now like crazy. For a while, it took 30 years to decipher the language, this cuneiform language, which is not really a single language at all. It's a mixture of several languages. It's very complicated. The same beings that created us created that. And now, with this new introduction of AI technology, AI can read the tablets. If there's nothing else better about AI, AI can read the tablets. AI, you know how a computer can compute a lot faster than a human? Well, AI has figured out this language in ways we never could have. And AI is reading these tablets right now in the British Museum in England. And they're telling stories that are biblical stories, but they happen to be hundreds of thousands of years older than the Bible stories. So ultimately, once these tablets have been gone through enough times and they start educating people about what these things are saying, it's basically going to make the Bible obsolete. It's going to make every story in the Bible seem like, really, you stole that one? So according to the tablets of Sumer, this is how the story goes. The Elohims of the book of Genesis were people who lived a very long time, but they couldn't live long on this planet because this planet rotates at a different speed than theirs does. We travel around the sun in 365 days, that's a year. 24 hours is a day to us. Well, their planet is so far away, it takes 3,600 days to make one revolution. So we're talking about 1 year to us is 36,000 years to them. And we live an average lifespan of maybe 65. I shouldn't say that because I'm older than that. We live to be like 80, 90, something, that kind of thing. I shouldn't say 90 because my father's older than that. So anyway, we live, but not like they did. They lived an average of 450,000 of our years was their lifespan. But they couldn't sustain that on this planet because their metabolism would change the longer they were here. Some of them were stuck here, had stayed too long. But for the ones who weren't stuck here, they would come here for a while and travel back home. Well, the Tower of Babel, not only was it not about babbling human beings, but what it was, in fact, a story about a tower. Now, what is a tower? A tall building. Well, not only is a tower a tall building, but a tower is usually something that you find at an airport because they have to direct their ships into landing strips. In this situation, it was no different. The Tower of Babylon was designed to guide ships coming in. These Elohims, they flew around on ships, the same ships they used when they came here. When you are a new civilization, you haven't been around long, and you start to see things coming out of the air, and they come down and they, you're very curious about them, but you don't really know what to make of them. So what you do is you put stories on walls, and you leave and you talk, and your historical record is transferred linguistically, and then you ultimately someone hears it and then they interpret it. Well, you basically you have to figure that people that saw things coming down, once your biblicists get a hold to that, they're going to take those things coming down as being coming from heaven. Anything up there was heaven. Up there is simply heaven, no matter what it is. If Amelia Earhart had been flown into the past and her airplane came down in Babylon, she would have been considered a goddess from heaven. Ardra or something. And so anyway, this is what I'm trying to say. This was their only way of explaining things that came from up there. But an advanced species could always come from up there whenever it felt like that, and it wouldn't be no big deal. They would just be in a ship. So the Bible interpreted this coming down things as Elohim's coming from heaven. And because they came down, didn't have a very good attitude or something, and felt like there was some kind of way, they said they were fallen angels, which means they made a mistake. They weren't supposed to, they got kicked out of heaven. Now, biblicists, just because it came from up there, don't mean it came from heaven. It is called outer space. That's what it is. It's outer space. When you come down, you came from outer space, not heaven. Okay? It's not that deep. It's not that serious. It's outer space. But anyway, what I'm trying to explain is that the time differential between beings from the Nibiru and Earth was different. What happened was they were building this tower, and it was rising, but the Anunnaki had to leave. When they leave for a certain period of time, 10 years, maybe 20 years, something like that. Well, when they came back, what they found was that the tower that was being built by the people there had risen immensely. They took this 4-story tower, and when they came back, it had risen to a point where it was very upsetting to the Anunnaki. So upsetting that it was the equivalent of an anthill being created in your backyard, and then you go, and when you come back tomorrow, these ants done build a house bigger than your house. And you're shocked because how did you do that? Well, their lifespan is shorter, and so they can get a lot more done in a certain period of time. We take our time and we build things on our time frame, whereas the ants, for instance, like I said, they can make a whole little city in a matter of a couple of days if you were able to see underground. Anyway, this is what happened. The Anunnaki left. They left the tower half built. When they came back, it reached the heavens. And that pissed off the Anunnaki. How dare you speed up your evolution, not to mention the fact that you didn't build the thing right. We know what we wanted it to look like. It was a landing port. So, the Anunnaki got very upset because of the sort of advanced technological advances of the people of Babylon. So they blew that sucker up. The tower had to go. The tower had to go because the way they looked at it, they disrespected their gods. They disrespected their authority by raising the tower without their permission. Without, if you look at it, it was as though they raised the tower without permits. That's what they did. They raised the tower without permits. Okay, so King Nebuchadnezzar was in charge of the building project, but he was threatened because, like I said, the building wasn't supposed to be built like it was and by whom it was. But Nebuchadnezzar was like, this is my building and I did it. Well, there was one particular God that we know of. We call him Yahweh or Enlil, the same one that's been doing all the stuff, causing floods and making up, creating scenarios where they're parting seas and all this. It's all about control. Nebuchadnezzar against Yahweh. Yahweh didn't appreciate the fact that they were building this building, the Tower of Babylon, without his expertise or blessings or whatever. And they decided that the tower had to go. The tower had to come down because they didn't have the proper permits. So that gets us ready for the next chapter. First we have the tower, then we have the lion god. And so basically what these two are about is the tower itself, why it had to come down, and then the sort of magic that Yahweh used against King Nebuchadnezzar to destroy that entire building. So first we want to introduce you to chapter 49, the tower. And then we're going to come back with the lion god.
Chapter 49, the tower.
While thought the Atlantean was in Egypt, raising the conscious level of the people, the Anunnaki were in Mesopotamia, enriching the lives of the people there. The concept of a new calendar was established and agreed upon by the Council on Nibiru. This calendar would be based on the 24-hour rotation of the planet Earth around its sun, rather than the passage of time on Nibiru. This calendar first appeared at Nippur. Enlil and Brother Enki had little time to spend, however, because they were needed elsewhere. The two gave somewhat simple instructions in the construction of ziggurats. The Anunnaki knew that it would be thousands of Earth years before they could begin to teach the Earth beings the complexities of a true pyramid build, not to mention the fact that these advanced structures were built using binary computational systems, far beyond their conceptualization. However, they did begin to teach the Earthlings the arts of science, mathematics and religion as Anu had decreed. The Earthlings began to bestow the names of gods and lords unto the Anunnaki with the belief that they were indeed the creators. True pyramids were for gods only, their purpose and their abilities far beyond the understanding of Earthman. The leadership would lead two groups of 11 to be the teachers. One group to teach masonry and the other architecture. They would transform slaves into master builders in the ancient techniques of brick molding, shaping and cutting in precise measure. They learned how to draw and calculate, to bond and weld with simple flames and adhesives. Marduk and his son, Naba, summoned the Igigi and their earthling offspring from all regions of the planet to come to the Eden, for the purpose of establishing a sacred city for which Marduk would rule. He named the city Babylon, the gateway of the gods. He engaged his followers in the construction of a tower high enough that he might reach the heavens, or rather be able to communicate directly with Nibiru. Under the whip of the soldiers of the armies of Marduk's son King Nebuchadnezzar, they learned with the quickness as the ultimate ziggurats, foundation was flat and true. Within a year the first two levels were complete as the bricks were hastily cast into molds, then released from their castings and delivered to their necessary locations. So impressed were the instructors that they soon left the ancient Babylonians. Their leadership would then take over as they hurried in ships to other locations. This tower was built not only as a beacon that could reach the communications network on Nibiru, but to also communicate with the many ships that were navigating the skies around Earth Station Number 1. It was also necessary to house the many celestial ships, making the Tower of Babel the #1 storage facility for space and sea vessels on the planet. Vessels were able to be lifted towards the top of the tower for takeoff, then stored deep within the bowels of the tower for maintenance. After the flood, the Anunnaki felt it necessary to further their influence to the other side of the world. These same architects would go on to create magnificent monuments on mountain ranges in what would become known as South America in a place called Peru. They created Machu Picchu long before the Incas came upon it, and the Pyramid of the Sun in the same hemisphere before the Aztecs came upon it as well. Although these monuments were not built by hand but rather by machines, the intricacy at Tiahuanaco, Bolivia still boggles the mind of modern architects. Back in the Middle East, narcissistic was the impression of self-adulation on the part of King Nebuchadnezzar. His erection of a two-story creation took place long before the pharaohs of Egypt began to falsely take responsibility for the construction of the pyramids at Giza. The king became impressed with his accomplishments. So impressed was he, that soldiers were sent outside the realm to find more slaves to continue the construction and to go higher and higher. The Anunnaki left specific instructions to complete the structure as it was designed. Yet the desire to reach the stars and to impress the Anunnaki was irresistible to the king. Up and up he went. First 2 more stories, then 2 more, and yet another, until it was 7 and a silver cloud rested upon it. Most impressive was the elevator system that would raise the ships to the very apex of the building. It had taken only 3 years to build a tower that would have taken the Anunnaki several hundred years to create if they were to have built them by hand. The metabolic rate of humans were far greater than an Anunnaki. For every 1 year that Earth traveled around its sun, 365 days, the time that it would take an Anunnaki was 3,600 to travel around theirs. Such a difference would amount to a lifespan of 422,000 Earth years. When the Anunnaki returned, they were shocked beyond measure to find that the Earthlings had accomplished so much in little time at all. It was the equivalent of the entire tower being built while the Anunnaki took a midday nap, as they were accustomed to doing quite often. This was quite disturbing, and Enlil was contacted immediately. Enlil decided that the tower had to be destroyed as soon as possible. Not again could Enlil use water to do so because of the promise that he made to his brother Enki as well as to humanity. However, the Anunnaki had many tricks at their disposal, including their expertise in facial prosthetics. It was just a matter of choosing the animal or reptilian head to represent the angered deity, then destroy the tower as the false gods took responsibility.
Subscribe and push the like button.
Chapter 50, The Lion God.
Imagine if you were to create a smart juice for ants to drink, and the next day you woke up to see that the ants had built a 10-story house in the image of your own. That is exactly how the Anunnaki felt. They thought that if man could evolve that quickly, they would find it difficult to control them. The tower must come down, said Enlil. They decided to disguise themselves as gods with the heads of lions, because lions were ferocious and this attack would be highly ferocious. They needed only to find a reason that these gods would be unhappy with them. They pondered for 2 Earth days and came up with nothing. So the gods decided to bomb anyway, no explanation necessary. The very next morning, as King Nebuchadnezzar woke to look out of his palace window, the skies began to darken as the sun rose. This was extremely difficult to understand because there were no visible clouds in the sky, just darkness. Enlil hurried to plan the bombing to coincide with a very rare lunar eclipse that would last for a short while only. At the peak of darkness, the attack began when out of nowhere a silent light arched through the sky, drifting slowly towards the apex of the tower, as crowds of people witnessed in amazement. Ever so slowly it drifted until it gently landed at the base of a door on the upper story floor, as the light of the object sat on the floor just beyond the steps. Suddenly there was heard a great roar of a lion. Then a face of a lion larger than 10 moons appeared in the sky just above the tower. The device erupted just as the gigantic lion had being-light eyes, then tilted its head at King Nebuchadnezzar, as if all of its anger was directed at the king himself. All in witness scurried in a panic as the shouting began to express the pain of the now wounded numbers. Another light emitted from again nowhere and bombed yet another portion of the tower building complex. It would happen 4 times until most of the tower was destroyed. A census indicated that just more than 200 Babylonians were killed that morning as the king and the lion god looked deep into each other's eyes. It was almost as if one king was trying to outstare the other, as the smoke began to dissipate, leaving the ungodly sight of the withering tower that was left smoldering in the mist, as the lunar shadow drifted towards the desert, ominously dissipating above the sandy dunes. The king could only bow his head to the god that could accomplish such an extraordinary feat. That god lion. Those god eyes, said the king. This would be etched in the minds of man for all times, which was indeed the purpose of the Anunnaki Enlil, who yet again found his way to exact his will upon humanity, keeping his promise of non-complete destruction.
Subscribe and push the like button.
Welcome back. You guys are such great students. We are learning a lot here. We're learning a lot here, and one of the main themes is that I'd like to focus on is the creator of the universe makes all the sense in the world if you understand what that creator is. If you take out the human equation that insists that human beings know every damn thing, then you can understand that there are certain things that we just are unaware of, and we will never know what these things are unless we open our minds to learn them. There's a big world out there, and there were civilizations here before we got here. I wasn't excited about any of this until I started to find out the word God was plural. Because I probably got a little off track and disappointed hearing about all the negative things that God was doing. So once we find out that God is not the one doing the negative things, well, then things take a whole different form, and then we get to separate the two, the biblical God and the creator of the universe. So this is what we're talking. This is the main thing that we're teaching here. Once we realize that, we'll realize that our spirit is connected to the creator of the universe, not the biblical God. The biblical God was a human being. He bled just like you do, and if you read the book of Leviticus, you'd even find out how he liked his barbecue cooked. It explains the whole thing there. And so anyway, so just understand that the universe is bigger than it was when we came up. And it's going to be bigger still the more we learn. So I want to thank you guys for coming, and don't forget to like and subscribe. We're really getting somewhere, and pretty soon we'll all be famous. Thank you for coming.